just have your attention, please? I apologize for interrupting both the conversation and your lunch, but we do have a speaker with us
whom I'd like to introduce. I think you'll enjoy the topic very much. Of course, in 2012, Congress passed the Spectrum Act, which funded the build-out of the nation's first broadband and wireless infrastructure for public safety readiness. TIA and many of you as member companies have long been focused on supporting that. The result is FirstNet. And we have with us today Mike Poth, CEO of FirstNet. A little bit about Mike. He's taken on a daunting challenge. He's in the Arlington area, and he is eminently qualified not just because he has a distinguished background working with HP, Northrop Grumman as a technologist, but he also carried the badge for 15 years. So I can assure you that when he walks into a municipality to discuss public safety readiness, he has a perspective, a valid perspective and credibility with the organization and certainly with the police departments there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce and please welcome Mike Poth.
Thank you very much. Please keep eating. As mentioned, I was a cop for a while, and I actually had a flashback when I was getting out of the car, and it's starting to warm up here a little in Texas, but I was a cop out in Arizona and did a lot of different things. One of the things, I was a motor cop for a little, so the city spent a lot of money teaching me how to ride a motorcycle safely and all that, and then shortly after that, they asked me to go into narcotics, so I had long hair and a beard. And they said, well, you know how to ride a motorcycle, you're going to be the biker guy. And it's like, I don't want to be the biker guy. I want to be the guy in the air-conditioned car guy. And some of you might remember Miami Vice. When that was when I was actually doing it, was nothing like that. It was just driving around on a motorcycle sweating, so I had a flashback as I was walking in. But thank you all very much for having us, and hopefully I can give you a little information about what we have going. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, and it's, when is the world and the death and destruction that has been going on is going to stop? It's just, when I first started this job a little over 2 years ago, maybe once a month, once a quarter, there'd be a tragedy, whether it's man-made or natural. Now, unfortunately, it's happening almost every week. Just a couple days ago. FirstNet was born out of the need from what happened from 9/11. But since 9/11, think about all the different events that have occurred, from Columbine to Hurricane Sandy to Katrina to Manchester shootings to all the people that died in Oakland 2 years ago, 36 people in a fire in a warehouse. And so FirstNet was born out of a need from the 9/11 Commission for a nationwide broadband interoperability network. But my focus and my passion is not only to have that go and get the FirstNet and the broadband built, but is to see if we can get innovation and technology someday to outrun terrorism and outrun and help save first responders that are reacting to those types of things. If you think about all the wildfires that happen throughout this country, not only is it causing death and destruction to the homes. There's something like over 100 million homes that live in what used to be probably forested areas. First responders, 466 firefighters last year, perished battling wildfires. So if we can bring technology and innovation just to save one or two of those, I think it's well worth it. We can't stop Mother Nature, but maybe there's something we can do. And we must continue to seek solutions and innovation, and that's where TIA and your individual companies and yourselves can have a big impact, and so I would plead to you. One of the things as a cop I learned, and I ran the SWAT team, the model we always had was improvise, adapt, and overcome, and that's what we need to do now with the technology. I'm absolutely convinced we will have a successful broadband build-out. We're going to have this big pipe. But what does that mean for public safety and for the communities that we're living in? We need to bring innovation. We need to bring Internet of Things. We need to bring all the things that you all are working on or thinking about and discussing during this conference is what public safety is desperately wanting you to bring to bear and bring to the market. So let me tell you a little about the First Responder Network Authority, or FirstNet. So as mentioned, we were born out of a statute in 2012 as a result of the 9/11 Commission. Last recommendation of the 9/11 Commission. Congress stood up this organization, so I run an independent authority within the government. I report to an independent board of directors that have 12 people from private sector and from public safety, and 3 federal board members. One is the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the other one's the OMB Director, and the other one is the Secretary of Homeland Security. So that's the board. I also report to Congress, and what they said is you need to develop a plan to build a broadband network that's inoperable for the 56 states and territories. And what they did is they gave the FirstNet $7 billion, which is not a trivial amount of money, and 20 megahertz of spectrum. And they said, try to build it. Well, as you all know better than anyone in this audience, to build a nationwide network is over anywhere from $40 to $60 billion in the 56 states and territories. And I only had $7 billion and 20 megahertz. So it required us to develop a business plan where we could reach out to the private sector to say, we need to work together in a true public-private partnership. We needed to align incentives to make it truly a win-win-win, a win for the public safety, a win for the federal and state and local governments, and a win for the private sector. Private sector needs to be hugely successful in order for this model to sustain and be successful. And we're able to start accomplishing that. So we developed a business plan, and so when you hear about the federal government and people talking about, and I started preaching a lot about return on investment, the value prop, freeing up capital, unlocking capital, private sector capital to make this happen, and setting up a plan to where they build what we need to the specifications that public safety at the state and local levels have said are important, and what we'll do in return is they're allowed to commoditize the excess spectrum to the benefit of their commercial entities. So truly trying to get into that win-win-win. So we set out with this to seek a solution that was important. So over the last, since 2012, the first 2 years of FirstNet, there was a lot of forming and storming, a lot of missteps that happened. And then in about 2014 and 2015, when I started, not that necessarily I brought calm to the place, we started to get some traction. And we collected information that was important to public safety, important to the states, important to the private sector. We had industry days saying, private sector, you know better than anyone how to get this done. What are the best practices that need to be incorporated? And out of that, we developed a proposal that was let last year. We made an award, and we made an award because we found a company that can meet the solution. We didn't go out looking for a carrier. We found a provider that can meet the solution for the 56 states and territories and for public safety. And so in March of this year, we awarded a contract, a 25-year contract to AT&T. So they are responsible for the build-out of this nationwide system, the broadband inoperable network. So what is the deal? As I mentioned, it's 25 years. You'll remember I had the $7 billion in cash and 20 megahertz of spectrum I brought to the table. AT&T is bringing $40 billion of their own capital to the table to build this out. They're also bringing $180 billion of their existing assets to bear to help in to build out. And there's also leveraging the rural telcos and the rural build out, because one of the things that we put in the contract, and it's actually part of the statute, is every phase of the build out there is rural coverage. We weren't just going to let a provider, in this case AT&T, build in Dallas, San Francisco, and New York City, for the first 3 years, and then year 5 start, doing a tip of the hat to the rural build out. So every component in all 56 states has a rural build out component, which is significant. We are also, I don't want to say driving, but AT&T knows we are taking them into non-economic areas to deploy. in the rural areas. It's important to public safety, whether it's because of high population events, you know, the Sturgis Rally, you don't even think about that in South Dakota. They get hundreds of millions of people during a short, intense time. That's important to them. Is that an economically viable area the rest of the time? Maybe or maybe not. Those are some of the things that we drove into the deal. We are going to be requiring them to build out a robust broadband network, period. We're going to hold them accountable. This is a good public-private partnership, but we are also responsible, and FirstNet was born not to just issue an RFP, is to make sure that public safety, this is their network, it's not the federal government's, it's not AT&T's, this is public safety's needs and network, that all those things are realized. One of the things that AT&T did as part of the bid offering is they said that they agreed that public safety is important. It's not just because they wanted our 20 megahertz of spectrum. They realize and appreciate the significance of what public safety and first responders do for us throughout the country. They are now, with states that opt in, and I'll explain a little about that in a minute, they will allow public safety to utilize their existing LTE spectrum day one for priority. So public safety devices in a state that the governor has opted in will have immediate access to priority during those times of crisis over anyone else, including all of us in this room. So whether it's the Super Bowl that Harris County just did, where public safety used the band 14 very successfully, or to, you know, a tragic event with a hurricane, public safety's devices will have priority over the rest of us. The rest of us will get shifted off to other spectrum. They're going to offer that day one, so our time to market, which is a key component for public safety, is going to be realized right out of the gate as they build out the band 14. So that's a significant thing. So the federal government, you know, we continue to invest and look at the opportunities to push. And I would ask TIA and all of you to continue that pushing. Part of the statute also set aside $300 million specifically for public safety innovation and technology exploration through one of our sister organizations, PSCR. And I would encourage you and your companies, if you're not aware of some of those offerings, to, if you have solution sets, ideas, to get those into the mix where they can be tested and explored to see if there's value and applicability. And that's one of the important ways of how you could plug in. You know, the three work streams in your, I think you call it your jam session this week, or these next couple of days, is right exactly where I want industry to help. We are absolutely going to build this pipe. It's going to be, as our current president would probably say, it's going to be tremendous, huge, you know, all that kind of thing. But it's not going to work if devices and applications and solutions aren't brought to bear for public safety and for civilians in the traffic. So what happens now is that we are finalizing the state plans. Each governor, as part of the statute and part of the process, has the ability and will be reviewing a specific plan in their state that covers their cost coverage schedule, the pricing to public safety entities for the use of the time and that kind of thing. So we're actually a couple of miles down. We're bringing all the 56 states and territories. Over 250 of them are going to be showing up tonight and over the next 2 days, where we're going to give them, providing detailed information to them as to specifically in their state plans how it's going to be built. They will then take that information and provide that to the governor, and the governor has two choices: to say, yes, let's have FirstNet and AT&T build it out to the plan that has been offered. There is no cost or no risk to the state, or the state certainly has a prerogative, and the Congress had the foresight to allow, because the federal government doesn't want to impose on states, not giving them choices. The governor can say, we've looked at your plan, we think we could do it better ourselves, and they can then develop an alternative plan. It's called opting out, where they can then develop, if it's as good or better than what we are offering, then I applaud that, and we will let them build that out. And they'll have an opportunity to participate in some grant funding if they choose, and that'll help offset a part of the cost. But as you know, can you imagine the cost to build, operate, and maintain a RAN in your state for 25 years? to build, operate, and maintain and upgrade and keep the technology current and the tech refreshes, because we are going to reinvest in this network for years to come. And that's one of FirstNet's major missions. You know, as the technology goes from 4G to 5G to 6G, who knows what the technology will even be 10 years from now. We're going to continue to reinvest into this network, reinvest into the private sector and industry to grow this network and to grow public safety technology on behalf. The states will have to do that if they chose to pursue it themselves. So we're working on that. We think there's been a lot of success, you know, with the mission critical high speed that we're going to be able to provide. A lot of the things that you guys are even talking about today, you know, machine to machine, Internet of Things, software as a service, all those things are critical to the success, I believe, for first responders going forward, not just in this country, but throughout the world. All the countries are looking at us. When I first started, we were actually going to be second or third net because the UK was ahead of us, South Korea, but they've had some trouble and they've stumbled out of the gate. So now we are truly FirstNet. So they're going to, you know, capitalize and take our lessons learned and what we're learning from the private sector, what we're learning from your companies and yourselves as to the best way to accomplish the mission for public safety. You know, we think there's a lot of success, but we're not ready to spike the football yet. Something is invariably going to go wrong. We've all been involved where the best of plans, the coolest looking PowerPoint, it sounded perfectly reasonable. Right out of the gate, something goes sideways. But you have my commitment and you have FirstNet and the federal government's commitment. We are going to continue, as I did in my SWAT days, improvise, adapt, and overcome, because public safety is counting on us. This is too critical to get this done, and we need to do it right. You know, every day public safety rises to the occasion to try to respond to these things, and technology is an invaluable tool to assist that. Do you know today in New York City, NYPD, they have 38,000 officers that are using a device on their hip that NYPD took some disparate applications and they cobbled them together. I say cobble, they think that's probably elegantly put together. So in the city, technology exists today. It's called Shot Finder. So if there's a gunshot that goes off in the city, there's monitors throughout the entire city in the 5 boroughs that will triangulate exactly where that gunshot came from. From that data, they're going to instantly, they now take that location and they send that location to the units, those devices that are immediately in that area, instantaneous. What's also happening instantaneous is the system is going out and doing a data call, querying, do they have any other activity at that location? Have they been there before? And if they've been there before, are there people that they have dealt with before? And if there are people that dealt there with before, do they have pictures of them? And if they have pictures of them, do they have wants and warrants? This is happening within seconds, going to the hips of the responders, the first responders, on their as it's happening. That is happening today. They are seeing this. They are responding even before the first 911 call is coming in where, hey, I think I heard some gunshots. That's happening today, the technology. 38,000 officers. They typically deploy about 6,000 officers a shift. Well, those same 6,000 officers and those devices work great when the spectrum isn't overloaded, when there isn't the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade and millions of people are on that same spectrum. Well, FirstNet was born to try to help those 6,000 responders in those times. When they need it, they'll have the priority over the rest of us and all the other people at the parade to be able to get that kind of technology. That exists today. Can you imagine what will exist 2 or 3 years from now? And you probably are working in some of your R&D labs and thinking about other things. What can you do to help and how to make a value prop to AT&T, to public safety, to the states where you can make a difference? You know, last month I attended the Law Enforcement Memorial, the annual, to honor all the officers that had died in the line of duty, and that happens throughout the country and even throughout the world. So we take our mission very serious about trying to provide the tools and the technology for first responders. But then if you think about it, those first responders, and I used to be one, I'm very humbled that I'm able to do a small part to try to contribute to that. But if you think about it, those first responders are helping us, helping our communities, helping our families, helping our children. So, you know, how can we not feel compelled to try to bring the best of what our companies and our people and our personal selves can bring to bear to help make things a little better? So lots of excitement. You'll hear about us. You'll read, I'm sure you're reading about us quite a bit. Don't believe everything you read. Unless we put it out, then believe everything because it's gospel, right? But thank you so much. I hope you have a great next couple of days, and thank you for having me. Thank you.